Patrick Lee is the founder of a little site called Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is one of the main sites. It's the site for getting info on movies. If you want to see what the review of a movie is, you're going to go on Rotten Tomatoes. And Patrick is the founder of that. He started as an agency owner and founded Rotten Tomatoes, sold it. He was the CEO for a while, sold the business, moved abroad, did a bunch of stuff in Asia, and then started a video game company. And I had him on the podcast. We talked for a while all about Rotten Tomatoes, how he launched the video game company, what he thinks about in terms of testing new business projects. A lot of cool things were discussed on this podcast, and I cannot wait to share it with you here on this channel. So stick around. Here's my conversation with Patrick Lee, founder of Rotten Tomatoes. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we're talking to Patrick Lee. He's the co-founder and former CEO of Rotten Tomatoes, which everyone knows. It's that leading entertainment website with movie reviews, news, one of the top 500 most traffic sites in the world. He sold that to IGN in 2004, and he's also the co-founder of Hobo Labs, which is his current focus, where they make guild-based casual mobile games. He also used to run a company called Design Reactor, which was an internet marketing firm focused on entertainment with clients like Disney, ABC, Warner Brothers, and Artisan Entertainment. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah. I'd love to start with your current focus, because I know everyone wants to start with Rotten Tomatoes, right? That's like the biggest thing. But you're doing mobile games right now, right?
Yes, made one mobile game. It's called Storm the Gates, and we just released it February 1st, and just busy doing updates on the game.
What do you think goes into a good mobile game? Like, what are some of the KPIs you're looking for when you're designing a game?
The biggest thing you're looking for is retention. So do players come back, day 1, day 3, day 7, as well as monetization. So if they come back, what percent of users are turning into spenders and kind of how much are they spending? And for us, the biggest focus has been on retention.
What are some of the biggest things you've learned so far, like launching that first game? Is there anything? Well, what was the most surprising thing about launching that game?
Well, with my co-founder and I, my co-founder's Lyle Fong, tried to make this company. Neither of us had actually made a game before, not a mobile game. And we're both big gamers, though. And I think one thing that, actually we should have realized was, it just takes way longer and costs more money than you think. And that's true with anything you do. But with gaming, it was especially true. And one thing with mobile games is that it's hard to just launch something and test it very quickly like you would with, a lot of other stuff within tech. Generally, you kind of have this one shot to go out and get the game, not necessarily perfect, but pretty polished before you can actually try and get it out there, try and get it featured, stuff like that.
Now you kind of feel like what the movie creators feel like when they get that Rotten Tomatoes rating. 4 years of hard work, and then you get like a 30%.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's hard to just, you can kind of test the script, or you can test early versions of the movie, but even early versions of the movie are still pretty complete. And so that was one thing, was just like the amount of time and effort you have to put in before you have even something that's even testable.
Is this more passion for you? Because it seems like you had, so Rotten Tomatoes is B2C, but before that you were doing B2B software development.
Yeah, so every startup I've done, Hobo Labs is my 6th startup, has been something I thought was interesting, and every single one of them has been with friends from college.
How did you think about starting this company? Like, what were some of the questions going through your mind? Because if this is startup number 6, or soon to be very successful company number 6, what are you thinking about on number 6 that you might not have been thinking about on number 2 or number 3?
The big thing was, after we sold Rotten Tomatoes, I went to Asia, went to China for 3 years, did a startup, went to Hong Kong for 6 years and did something there. Coming back, it was more about just being closer to family and, friends and things like that. I had a friend that I did my first company with, Lyle, and he had done another company in between called Lithium Technologies, which has, done quite well. And then we were just hanging out, and he was talking about doing something new. And he was originally thinking about doing another enterprise company. And I said, after lithium, you pretty much never need to work again. Why don't you just retire and take a break? And if you still want to do something, why don't you either do something for fun? And I specifically said, like, make a game, make a movie, write a book, start a band, something like that, or do something kind of crazy like a Tesla or SpaceX. Why just do the same thing again? And then a couple weeks later, we were all hanging out, and he said, "Okay, let's make a game." And so that's why we did it. We liked, it's like if you love playing games, a lot of folks are like, well, one day it'd be nice to try making one. And so that's what we did with this company. And we were very straight up with, investors and everyone that it's like, one, we never have made a game before. And it's also not an easy market to do well in. It's very hits based. So we knew that going in.
When you're reaching out to investors and you're using your network for an industry where you don't have any of that expertise, or like you were saying, if you're framing it that way, why are they investing in you?
I would say our main investor was, a lot of it was really to support Lyle, because I think they were one of the biggest investors in lithium. So they were pretty much anything he was going to do next, they were going to support. And then everyone else who came in on top of that, a lot of those were just, other tech founder friends, and they were doing it again, really to just support us and back us in what we wanted to do. Yeah.
What makes you want to aim like so big? Like what I'm trying to figure out is, so six companies and like a lot of winners in there. And then also when you were starting your agency, you went straight for the entertainment niche and you ended up with like Disney and some of these huge companies. And I'm wondering if that is how do you think about growing a company, right? Because a lot of people, they would just stay with small and local businesses. Like a lot of people do end up just working for those small clients. So how do you think about acquiring clients when you're growing a company?
Yeah, I mean, when I do these startups, it's not really about like, hey, we want to try and make this huge thing and make a lot of money and all that. A lot of it was just passion projects, things that seem interesting to me at the time. That's why so many of them have kind of related to entertainment. Our design firm and Rotten Tomatoes, and the company Alive Not Dead, which I was doing in Hong Kong, which was kind of like a MySpace working with like celebrities and artists. And that's why this current company is gaming. As far as getting clients and stuff, when we started our design firm, we were trying to be everything for everyone. We were trying to do 3D design, print design, and web design for any type of client. And very quickly, we realized we had to focus more. It was very hard to do 3D design back then. This was like mid 90s, so we just didn't have the processing power. Like, we make one change and it would take all our computers the entire night to render everything again. So we got rid of that. Print design was a similar problem. You're still working with pretty large files, because it has to be print quality, and you would have to send stuff to the printer 2 weeks in advance of when it was actually due, to kind of make sure the colors and everything matched up. So we decided to stop doing that, and we just said, let's just focus on web design. As far as clients, we originally had random companies or random small businesses, like a dentist website and some random tech companies and other things. And it was like $500, $1,000, for a website. And we were pretty much nearly straight out of school. So we thought, hey, this is not bad. We can make a living off of this. And we were able to get into Disney sort of kind of by luck. One of the people we worked with, who had a tech website called Tom's Hardware, the president of it was like, hey, you guys do really good work. We were helping him on some stuff. Why don't you meet my daughter, who is at Disney Channel? And it was at Comdex in Vegas. So we flew to Vegas and met up, and just to like meet her and see if there's any opportunity to do anything with them. And I think at the time they had just, when we met her, she told us that they had just fired their lead developer, because the lead developer, I think, had some disgruntled engineer, put a curse word in that somehow made it past 3 layers of QA and went live. And so with Disney, that's like a huge no-no.
Yeah.
They got fired. And then she's like, well, what do you have, like, portfolio-wise, that you can show us? Maybe we can kind of throw some of that work to you guys. And so when we came back, we realized we have nothing in our portfolio that would be interesting to Disney. It was, again, like dentist websites, random tech websites. So what we did was we came back from Comdex, called up a couple other friends, brought them all together and said, look, we need to make something for Disney to show them what we can do. because we don't have a portfolio that we can show them. And so we looked on their site, tried to see what movies are coming up that they don't have a website for. We found Mighty Ducks 2 was one of those. Went out to Blockbuster, rented the movie. All of us, it was probably like a dozen of us, sat around watching the movie. And then after that, we just I had everyone split into like small teams to work on different parts of it. And we built a fully functioning website for it that was kind of roughly in the style of their other websites, with bios, wallpapers, synopsis, icons, even like 2 working Flash games, one of which was basically like Pong, but kind of branded to Mighty Ducks, or it's like ice hockey. And so we submitted it to them. It took basically a weekend, like maybe I think it was about 3 days, and said, look, we don't have anything on portfolio that would really make sense for you guys, but we made this to kind of show you what we can do. And she was just blown away because she knew there's no possible way we could have like done that in advance.
Right.
And because we didn't know anything about this developer or anything. And so the stuff we built was not really to Disney's style. So they ended up not being able to use the website, but then they did want the 2 games. And so they negotiated with us and ended up buying the 2 games for, I think it was around $12,000 or something in that range, which for us was huge compared to, $500, $1,000 websites. And they sent us a huge style guide, and so we could fix up the games. But then after that, they started giving us more and more and more work, to eventually to a point where we were doing a $1 million maintenance contract with them over the course of 1 year, making like 50 games for them. And then a lot of the people from Disney Channel would move on pretty quickly, the producers, and they would go on to companies like VH1, MTV, ABC, Warner Brothers, and they would take us along with them. And so that's, after we basically got Disney Channel, we didn't really have to cold call anyone after that. We still would have to pitch, but we wouldn't have to cold call, because everyone at Disney Channel that we worked with knew that we did a really good job. We were cheap, we were fast, and so they could bring us with them to somewhere else, and we would make them look good.
Was there ever, this might be way too far back in the past to remember, but like when your client offered to introduce you to the daughter, but you had to fly out to Vegas, like was there any discussion with the team about like maybe that's not a good investment or anything like that, or were you just like, yeah, let's do it, this is the opportunity that we were waiting for?
We didn't even know if it was necessarily an opportunity. We just, because we didn't have the whole team, I think it was like 2 or 3 of us that went. We thought it'd be interesting. We can check out Comdex, and actually because we had some tech websites and stuff that we had done for these different companies, we figured it might be a good way to get more tech clients there. But we didn't actually expect to really get an entertainment client. But once we went into the entertainment side, we realized, we like this a lot more than making a tech website. It's way more interesting. And so we just went and focused around that.
A cold email campaign is one of the easiest ways, one of the most straightforward ways I've found to get new clients. We've used it to match with most of the Fortune 500 for our agency clients and a lot of billion-dollar brands we've been able to sell. We've generated millions of dollars of revenue just from cold email. The problem is if you've tried cold email, it's not as straightforward and as easy as it looks. But luckily, we have put together the cold email optimization checklist, and you can have it for free. What this is the internal tool we use to optimize our cold email campaigns. This checklist will teach you or your team when to rewrite the subject line, when to rewrite the body of the email, what to put in the body of the email, how to check the email to make sure there's no errors before the send goes out. All of that in a very straightforward checklist, and you can have it for free. To get it, go over to experiment27.com/checklist, and you can have that download. Again, the URL is experiment27.com/checklist.
Was it tough to convince or how did you convince the rest of your team to work for free? Because that's working over the weekend, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just our team. We had random friends that we had not even hired, but we were thinking about trying to hire, that we just asked as a huge favor. I think at the time, it wasn't that hard. Everyone knew we were just starting out, and everyone was pretty much straight out of school. So it wasn't that big of a deal back then. People were all still living like college students, and we're used to doing things for cheap or for free.
Were there any other times you tried that custom website strategy and it didn't work out?
No, we tried it one other time for this actor named Jet Li. We were big fans of his, and he was doing, I think he was appearing at a comic convention in LA back when Lethal Weapon 4 was coming out, and he was the main bad guy. And so we drove down to LA, or flew down to LA to check out the comic convention. We happened to, the day before, run into some other folks who were like coaching in this martial art that Jet Li studied, and they knew him. So they were like, oh yeah, well, we'll join you the next day. So when we went the next day, they went up, we all went up and they talked to Jet and we all said hi. But meanwhile, when Jet went up to go and sign autographs, his publicist was still standing in the back. And so I started talking to the publicist and I was like, hey, does he have a website? And she said no. And then we did the same thing. I came back and grabbed the team. And, at this time we were bigger. We had a number of employees, but I still grabbed the whole team and said, look, let's brainstorm. Let's put something together and send it over and see what they think. And so we built, again, like a full, I don't know if it was a full website, but we definitely had like a lot of mock-ups. And we presented it to his assistant and the PR person, and they liked what we were doing. And we ended up turning into a full website. And back then, it was actually one of the best things on our portfolio because it's really good for back then. And because of that, Jet ended up bringing us into doing stuff with Warner Brothers because he was doing a lot of films for them and Artisan Entertainment. So it actually ended up getting us more clients through him, even though he wasn't paying us, but he made referrals, or his assistant made referrals. So it worked out.
So I was listening to this other interview where you're talking about how your skill set's not really a CTO. You're more of like the sales guy, more of like the guy who does whatever needs to be done. And I'm wondering, so all these businesses have like a entertainment component to them. Is there a reason you didn't make your own film or pursue producing or anything like that? Like I know you funded an indie film in China, right?
I mean, much later after we sold Rotten Tomatoes, I put into a film fund in China that made 4 films and invested into indie films and looked at a lot of scripts and things like that. But it was much more about getting friends together to do something that seemed interesting or fun. And yeah, films is something I'm interested in, but I'm not like an expert. Actually, my 2 co-founders, Sen and Steven, are much bigger movie buffs than I am.
And you're more passionate about, or what are you most passionate about?
Doing something cool with friends.
Yeah. How does the business structure work right now? So with your with the game company, you're funded, right? You raise money for it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach that as a founder? Because it really is a launch based company, right? Like if this game went south, that would be it.
Yeah. So there's like kind of 3 ways any of these things can go. I mean, along a scale. The game can come out, it can be a huge hit. Its retention is really high, engagement is really high, it monetizes super well. In which case, you can get a publisher on board, or you can just kind of put a lot of money towards marketing it. But then you should, ideally, in that situation, you're acquiring users for less than what you can make off those users, and then you can just grow like crazy. There's the very bad case where it's just a bomb. Like people don't come back, no one's spending, and that's it. I mean, at that point, if you have money to make another game, great. If not, you're done. And then there's kind of the middle case where some users are coming back and some people are spending money, but it's not necessarily enough that you can really acquire users. You can't acquire users for more cheaply than like what those users will bring you. We kind of fell into that category. And in this situation, we're just, trying to continue to add features, content, and make fixes that we hope can kind of help improve the numbers. So this is a tough spot to be in because you don't know like how much longer do you put in before you kind of decide, hey, it's not working and you end it, or can you ever get it up to a hit? And with larger game studios, they'll release and test a lot of different ideas and games, and if it's not working, they'll just kill it. But in our case, we pretty much raised to do one, so we're still sticking with it and still working on trying to improve it. And we do have enough of these like hardcore users that it's kind of given us the incentive to try to push forward and try to make it work for those users. And yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we have these users who are really active and everything that make us want to try to see if we can figure out a way to make the game work.
So where does that put you as a founder, right? Like, because the company you had in Asia was kind of like that for a while as well. So how do you know when would be the time to move on versus keep investing and maybe turn it around?
Yeah, so the one in in Hong Kong, we ended up doing for 6 years, but looking back, realistically, we probably should only put about 2 years in. And at that point, when it wasn't growing, we should have just stopped it. But we were, trying to push through. And with this company, it's taken a while to even launch the game. Now that we launched, I think the plan is we have kind of this like core team that's still working on it. And we all are like, we're going to put in another 6 months and see what we can do on it. And we also told people, like, even within the core team, like, look at other options, see what else is out there. If you need to get another job or whatever, or you just want to take a break and work remotely, great. So we're still giving it some more time to kind of see, because we, a lot of these things aren't perfect out the gate, and we didn't have, because we took so long to make it, we didn't have enough time to really go to test market with this version of the game. So in a way, right now we are kind of in that test market, but at the same time, we don't want to lock people in for years and years longer if it's not really going anywhere. So we kind of put this rough, 6 month or so kind of timeline on this, and we'll see where we are. Even a few months from now, if we don't have any users left, that's it. Or if the numbers are improving, then we can kind of go from there. But that's kind of how we're approaching this one.
How'd you come up with 6 months?
Because we kind of pivoted very extremely back at the beginning of November of last year, and we launched February 1st of this year, so it's only in 4 months. When we launched this version of the game, it was probably only about half done, and even now it's about 60% done. So our thought was, we just want to 6 months, we'll get it to a point where we can kind of finish a pretty full version of this version of the game. And so all of us who've been working on this are like, well, we kind of at least want to see what does that look like, and not judge on a half, 50% version of the game.
Right. Okay. So I want to take it back to Rotten Tomatoes for a second, because that was a company that it got like hockey stick growth, right? Like it was growing. It seemed, at least based on your other story, it seemed like it was growing pretty organically. You weren't buying traffic or anything.
Right.
Is that something that you think, like, is that what you're looking for in a business? For instance, like I know you have the 6 month time limit. You came to that. When you're testing business concepts, is that something you're really looking for? Like, are you looking for that huge win? Is it obvious, or is this something like is this something where it's more you like riding it out, regardless of the outcome?
Well, with Rotten Tomatoes, actually, it never had the hockey stick. It just had fairly steady growth. It could go up and down in any given month, but over any given quarter, for the most part, it would be going up for 20 years now. And even when we sold it, it was already something that a lot of folks who were into movies knew about, and now I think it's something that almost anybody knows about. So we never had that huge growth. We just had steady, continuous growth, and that's the one thing I would say is, like, it's great if you go hockey stick, but very, very few companies will ever do that. But as long as you're kind of growing at a reasonable and steady rate, that's not bad either. Kind of worst case, it can turn into like a lifestyle business that if it keeps growing can turn into like a decent, very comfortable living for the folks involved with that company. It's when it's very slow growth or no growth or very slow decline, that's super hard, and that's when you really need to think about, should you keep putting time into this, or try a pivot or two, because when it goes even, let's just say, flat, it's just really hard to keep morale up. And it doesn't matter what kind of like benefits you can have, free lunches or whatever it is. It doesn't really help if the company's not growing, and if it's declining, that's just killer. But
especially in tech, right? Because everyone wants to be part of a rapidly growing startup.
Exactly. And if it's rapidly growing, it almost doesn't matter how few benefits and things you have. Like, morale will be quite high. And in a way, I actually think that's sometimes what contributes to like this kind of toxic culture, is things are growing really quickly, to a point where, one, it's hard to even set culture because you're just adding headcount and everything so fast. But two, it's like you never had a chance, because everything, the growth rate kind of fixes so many problems. You don't even know if you have something really bad culture-wise until it kind of starts slowing down. And then you might be like, oh, crap, like the culture here is super toxic. But the growth was masking all of that, So
how do you?
Yeah, go ahead.
So how do you talk about that? When you're in a situation like you are right now with your game company, How do you talk about that to your investors, to your employees? Like, how are you framing that to them?
Uh, with our employees, we're always super transparent about like, here's uh, all the numbers. Whenever we had any kind of numbers or metrics, we would always share that with everybody. We're like, here's what's in the bank, and so just very like what we're trying to do, and as I think being super transparent, and our team was quite small, like that definitely helped. And investors too. We're always, even from the beginning when we were raising, we were very upfront, and every time we were like, here's it is. We didn't try to sugarcoat it in any way, and they knew that this is super hits based. I mean, the big studios again, game studios, they'll put in even more time and a lot more money into games that within a couple of months are like, nope, it's not working, and just try again. I mean, movies are another good example of that.
Was there a reason then you decided to go with one game versus picking 5, 6 games and maybe trying to launch like a few at the same time, or going for much cheaper games, or doing some other strategy versus like one shot, one kill sort of deal?
When we originally started, we wanted to do 3 games that we would launch. We did launch one other game, but it was a test game that we did. We wanted to do it quickly. It still took 6 months, but just kind of go through the process of making a game. And actually, that one wasn't terrible. Like if we actually stuck it out with that one and continue to improve it, it could have been good too, I think. But a lot of it was we wanted to do 3. We really only did one real one, and it was just because it took so much longer than we expected. And so, yeah, I mean, looking back, there's a lot of things we probably could have done better. One big thing I think that, based on what I've seen in the movie space, that we should have probably done here is my co-founder and I should have figured out exactly, or very, very close to like what game it is we want to make. Then when we were hiring people, make sure everyone who joined wanted to make that game. And we also were hiring people who actually fit the type of game we wanted to make. I think the big mistake we made was we hired a bunch of people who were all very good and very talented, but we didn't have a specific game in mind. We had like a general area of things we were interested in. And because we didn't have that, then we were like, hey, so what should we make? And then it became a little bit like everyone started inputting. We were kind of limited in what kind of game we could make to the people we had and what they could do. And also a lot of people had different tastes. So it just was, I think, and that ended up kind of slowing things down, versus had we been more focused. And, when you look at movies, generally you have a producer or director or something running around with a script first, trying to, like a producer trying to attach a director and actors as well as raise money around that. And then when they get it, they're hiring actors and a director based on that script. And when those people are getting hired, they know why they're, signing on with this movie. You wouldn't bring together an actor and random directors, assuming they haven't even worked together before, even if they're all very talented, and then suddenly are like, hey, now what movie should we make? I think maybe that possibly could work, but it's definitely going to take longer and be more expensive than the other way around. And that's what I've learned.
Now you know that though, right? So now the next time it should be more successful, or at least have a higher chance of success.
Yes, and I think this can apply to a lot of other projects and stuff in the future that I may work on.
Awesome. Patrick, where's the best place for people to check you out online?
I don't really have a strong presence. I mean, you can check out Hobo Labs to look up our game. LinkedIn is one way. If people want to connect with me, reach out to me. If they've heard this podcast and they want to write anything to me, they can do it through LinkedIn. Otherwise, Twitter, Instagram, you can look for Rotten Doubt is my alias. So Rotten like Rotten Tomatoes, and Doubt like DOUBT, like no doubt. And I just been using that for a long time. And that way you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. But to be honest, I don't really post much on either.
Sounds good. All right, Patrick, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hate most business content out there because they don't deliver enough value. It's almost like they're trying to give you as little as possible so they can sell you on a course. And I've hated this business content for years now. So in order to fix that, I decided to start making content on my own. And that's what we focus on the Alex Berman YouTube channel. They're in-depth business tutorials, takeaways, real email scripts that we have taken and we've learned from doing sales for almost a decade now, having generated hundreds of millions of dollars in leads for our clients and millions of dollars in sales for them. So we're giving all of this stuff away for free. You can get a playlist of our most helpful videos on b2bsalestraining.org. It'll go right to the YouTube channel, or youtube.com/Alex Berman. And once you get to that channel, it's not enough to just watch the videos. Give it a subscribe. And I would love to see you around. Right now we post 3 videos a week. We've been doing that for the last 4 years. See you soon. You can also check out my social media. I'm on Twitter, Alex Berman with no E, ALX Berman, or Instagram, Alex Berman1. Till the next episode, I will see you later.